Some of the victims of ADL smears actually fight back, not just via writing, but in court as well. William and Dorothy Quigley were two victims of an ADL smear campaign, and they decided to fight back. In 1994, the Quigleys began having neighborly disputes with Mitchell and Candace Aronson, a Jewish couple. The Aronsons got the ADL involved, alleging that the Quigleys, quote, were plotting to drive them out of the neighborhood because they were Jewish, close quote, based on some comments they illegally recorded the Quigleys saying on their cordless phone. The ADL consulted with the district attorney and advised the Aronsons to continue the illegal recordings for another 6 weeks. In December of that year, the Aronsons filed charges against the Quigleys, and the ADL immediately began its smear campaign. The case unraveled quickly and was eventually dropped. The Quigleys then went after the ADL and won one of the largest defamation awards ever in Colorado, more than $10 million. U.S. District Judge Edward Nottingham wrote on March 31st in a 46-page order and memorandum of decision obtained by the Forward, an English version of the Yiddish newspaper from New York.
Based on its position in history as a well-respected civil rights institution, it is not unreasonable to infer that public charges of anti-Semitism leveled by the ADL will be taken seriously and assumed by many to be true without question. In that respect, the ADL is in a unique position of being able to cause substantial harm to individuals when it lends its backing to allegations of anti-Semitism. The large damage award will, at a minimum, provide a deterrent effect against the ADL from engaging in future conduct involving the use of intercepted telephone conversations to pursue a civil lawsuit against persons perceived to be anti-Semitic.
Adolf Hitler is well known as one of the greatest orators who ever lived. So it was natural that a video collection to be released by Sony entitled The Speeches Collection would feature this man. The ADL protested this move and in a press release stated,
"In response to a protest by the Anti-Defamation League, a division of Time Warner and Sony has agreed to remove a video on Hitler from a catalog offering a collection of, quote, some of the greatest speeches delivered by world leaders, close quote. The company assured ADL that in the future it would revise its catalog proofing process as well. The league praised such prompt action."
Hitler may well be thought of as the most evil being to ever walk the planet, so the actions of the ADL shouldn't really offend very many people. But should a well-liked individual such as Mel Gibson be given the same treatment? Mel Gibson decided, in a tribute to his faith, to make a movie about Jesus' last days originally entitled The Passion. This movie was to be based completely on the Bible, the original Bible that existed until a few decades ago, when it was modified to be more Jewish-friendly, more politically correct. The crucifixion of Jesus was a Jewish affair, according to this politically incorrect Bible. The ADL started the anti-Gibson propaganda after a group of Christian and Jewish scholars reviewed the script of the movie and didn't feel it was politically correct enough. Gibson initially decided to stand his ground. Eventually, Gibson caved in under the smears of anti-Semitism and not only stated he would modify the movie to omit Matthew 27:25, for example, but also decided to launch the Jewish Initiative to recruit Jewish and Christian leaders to, quote, discuss the film's effects on Christian-Jewish relations, close quote. However, on January 22, 2004, the Associated Press ran an article that exposed the fact that Abe Foxman and another Jewish leader posed as pastors and, quote, paid their way in, close quote, to a special screening of the movie. They were horrified that Mel Gibson dared to not modify the Bible of his religion to accommodate their demands. The president of the Catholic League, a civil rights organization for Catholics, William A. Donahue, has demanded that Abe Foxman and the ADL publicly apologize for one of the more vicious defamations they've hurled at Christians over this movie. As of the completion of this documentary, the anti-Gibson propaganda was still in full swing. The ADL believes that cyberspace is a dangerous place for children in regards to hate. So the ADL created something called the hate filter, which not only blocked sites that the Anti-Defamation League found objectionable, but redirected people who went to those sites to a special educational page on ADL's site. Matt Isaacs of San Francisco Weekly.
So far, nobody is connecting the dots in a public way. An organization with a history of ruthlessly silencing its critics is trying to dictate the internet content available to the country's young minds.
In addition to filtering sites the ADL deems objectionable, they've also been working hand in hand with internet service providers to prevent such sites from existing in the first place. The October 21, 1996 ADL press release includes the following statement.
We are working with America Online to create an atmosphere of responsibility online, to set standards within the framework of the First Amendment that will give assurances to parents, educators, and communities that there is no tolerance for hate online.
These are now part of what are referred to as Agreement to Rules of User Conduct, or Terms of Service. After working with AOL to make sure there was a written policy in place for dealing with that which the ADL declares to be offensive, the ADL sent out this press release on April 7, 1997.
AOL's terms of service state that AOL Incorporated, its affiliates and ICPs have the right to remove content they deem, in their discretion, harmful or offensive. The League calls on AOL to live up to its own commitments.
The ADL offers its services as experts on hate, works with ISPs to establish the legal ground needed to limit the amount of hate, then make sure the ISP lives up to its own rules. The ISPs, if they want to avoid bad press, work hard to ensure that the ADLs will be done. In July 1992, Chicago Public Library research librarian David Williams presented his well-documented case of anti-Palestinian censorship and all-around genocidal treatment by Israel to the American Library Association. In response to this presentation based on 9 years of research, the ALA passed 2 Israel-critical resolutions. The ALA took on such an issue because, as then President Marilyn Miller stated,
the American Library Association has engaged in issues of human rights and intellectual freedom around the world since its establishment in 1876.
Standing up to Israeli censorship and genocidal policies was a logical continuation of this tradition. The ADL and Jewish librarians were quick to react, however, and through their lobbying, threats, and intimidation tactics, eventually managed to have the resolutions pulled. Jeffrey Blankford, in his article entitled "An Act of Censorship, American Library Association Becomes Another Israeli-Occupied Territory," wrote,
in a statement following the rejection of the resolution, Williams pointed out the implications of the entire issue. Quote, the significance of ALA's breaking with the public taboo on criticizing Israel was taken very seriously by the Anti-Defamation League and other Israel lobby groups whose role is to censor, intimidate, and otherwise stifle public criticism of Israel in the United States. It is precisely because of the importance of U.S. aid that they could not afford to let Israel be criticized in such fashion by a mainstream professional organization. Close quote.
A law professor at the University of Illinois named Francis Boyle felt, quote, the ADL's wrath, close quote, after he and a colleague began giving lectures critical of Israel. ADL members would attend the lectures and shout Boyle down. Boyle stated,
I was really surprised. Here I thought the ADL was this great civil rights organization, and they're doing these things that are totally antithetical to what academic freedom is supposed to be about.
The ADL's mission has allegedly been to combat hate. Making hate a crime, obviously, would go a long way in this battle. And so, through the actions and lobbying efforts of the ADL, a new category of crime called hate crime was born. The Fifth Amendment guarantees protection from double jeopardy, that is, being punished for the same crime more than once. The First Amendment guarantees the right to freedom of speech and thought. Hate crime legislation effectively negates both amendments. As Carl Perlston wrote,
this focus on eliminating hate logically led to the creation of hate crimes, in which a two-tier system of criminality was created. 1, those who commit crimes of violence for any reason other than hate, and 2, those who do injuries solely because they hate the status or class of the victim, race, sex, nationality, religion, disability, occupation, sexual orientation, etc. Criminals of the latter class are punished more severely than those of the former, even though both may commit the same violent crime. The punishment is levied on the thought or feeling or state of mind of the criminal and not the action, in keeping with the emphasis on eliminating and punishing hateful thoughts and feelings. Creating preferred classes of crime victims is not a proper function of the American criminal justice system, nor does it seem desirable to federalize and supplant state criminal law enforcement, which is what results from enacting hate crime legislation at the federal level. The concept of hate crimes inevitably leads to that of hate speech, in which offensive, insensitive, or hurtful speech is legally banned.
On January 16, 2004, ADL officials in Florida bragged about the fact that Florida's hate crime laws, quote, were written by the ADL and passed by Florida legislation in 1989. The ADL itself wrote in the introduction to their 1999 Hate Crimes Laws article,
ADL has long been in the forefront of national and state efforts to deter and counteract hate-motivated criminal activity. In June 1993, the United States Supreme Court upheld a Wisconsin hate crime statute that was based on model legislation originally drafted by the Anti-Defamation League in 1981.